This new album, Different Game, of course, that comes out later this month. I will put a purchasing link just below this video. First of all, the title track, it's gorgeous. I love that, the organ sound. It's got a kind of a classic 60s feel to it. I wonder if you
Yeah.
could talk a little bit about that number. Is it a number about looking back at all?
Well, I mean, it's going to be very interesting for me because I know that people are going to ask me about the songs.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, Rod wrote most of them. So I do know about this song. I won't make it too personal, but it's actually about someone from a very big American band who had trouble accepting responsibility for their actions. You know, they tended to think that everything was everyone else's fault,
Yeah.
and that's where the spark of the song came from. I mean, usually songs aren't literal, you know, it's not line for line, but you need to get that energy from somewhere to start a song, and I know that that's where this song came from.
Right. Um, I love the track on here, Rediscover.
Yes.
I love the vocal harmonies on that, and I suppose I'm just intrigued about how do you keep. It sounds very Beach Boys like. I'm just
Oh,
wondering.
it does, doesn't it? Yeah. I think, you know, a lot of that does come from Rod because apart from being a really fine keyboard player, he
Yeah,
was in St. Albans Cathedral Choir when he was a lad,
yeah,
up until he was about 18. We used to go and pick him up by the cathedral after evensong if we had a gig on a Sunday, and he'd go straight from evensong to a rock and roll gig with the
right,
Zombies. But it gave him a really good knowledge of harmony,
sure,
and often the kind of harmonies that Rod writes, they're quite sophisticated. You know, you have to know about harmony to write those harmonies.
yeah,
Uh, and we always had that advantage, even in the original band. We were a keyboard based band that always featured three-part harmony, which was completely out of fashion when we started in 1964. 1961, it was the time of the Shadows and the Ventures and things like that.
sure.
So although we did it because we were playing to our strengths, we certainly didn't get an easy ride because of it, and we probably lost some work because we didn't fit in with what the other bands were doing at the time. But getting back to that song, no, that is a lovely musical piece that, and it's something that all the guys are good harmony singers, so it's something that is well within their capabilities, obviously.
Yeah, and I have to ask, your voice sounds remarkable on this album. How do you keep your voice in such good shape?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I, I think I was really lucky that I studied only for a short time, but I studied singing technique with a coach called Ian Adam
Right.
when I was in my 40s, maybe even in my 50s. I hadn't had any singing coaching up to that point, but he not only taught me a little bit about singing technique, but he gave me a set of exercises that I try to do every day. When we're on the road, I do them twice a day. I do them before sound check and I do them before the show. When we're not on the road, I probably do them 3 or 4 times a week. And I find that really helps. Apart from that, I think, especially as you get older, you just have to look after yourself. You know, I look back on the lifestyle we had when we were in our teens, and you could never keep that up now. You know, we all have to be a little bit careful. And I would say, apart from getting plenty of sleep and eating sensibly, the big thing is to drink lots of water. You you
Wow.
you have to stay hydrated, and that's true of just being on the road, but especially if you're a singer, you
Yeah.
have to stay hydrated. So they're the sort of things, really. Stay hydrated, learn a little bit about singing technique, and get a set of exercises that work for you because they're very personal. You have to study with the right singing coach to make sure it works for you.
Sure. I mean, coming back to the title track, I mean, I've got to ask, who plays strings on that? There's lovely like string arrangements on that one.
God, they're a wonderful quartet. I should know all this, shouldn't I? They do have a name. Um, the Q strings, I think they were called. Q
Right.
strings. They're
Right.
fabulous. Absolutely great. They do play with ELO sometimes. So they
Right.
are, they're really hot players. It's great
Yeah.
to play with them.
I mean, it's wonderful. I'm just wondering. First of all, you're going out on tour, I think, very soon.
Yes, I think in
Um,
April.
and I don't know if you're going to be accompanied by these guys. I don't know. But also, how well do you think the new material will sit alongside the stuff from Odyssey and Oracle?
I also don't know if they'll be playing with us, and I should perhaps just point out that guys is the wrong word because they're gals. Um,
Okay.
I don't know if they'll be playing with us, but I mean they might do some of the dates. I don't think they'll be doing all of them. I'm sure it will fit very well alongside Odyssey and Oracle because it's one of the good things about this incarnation of the band that we have the main writer from the Zombies and we
Yeah.
have the lead singer from the Zombies. So a lot of what made up the original incarnation of the band is present in the new incarnation of the band. And we've had no problems in the past. We've recorded 4 or 5 albums before this one
Yeah.
since we got back together again in 1999, and we've always managed to slot the new tunes in and they work really well with the old standards.
Well, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question because you said Rod does all the writing, but the Sun Will Rise is such a beautiful track, the
Ah,
guitar and the breathy vocals. I'm just wondering what the inspiration for that one is.
well, that's interesting you should pick on that because that's the one song I wrote. So I can tell you.
Beautiful, beautiful song.
Oh, thank you. Um, really, the idea of this is based all around my daughter. She was going
Okay.
through a really difficult time, and um, that's what triggered the idea of the lyric. And if you follow the lyric through, it's it's love for someone, but not a romantic love. It's a
No.
father's love for a daughter.
Yeah.
And that's what triggered the track. I'm glad you mentioned that one because that's the only one I can talk about with authority.
Yeah. It's my favorite on the album. I just love the way it sounds. The guitar at the start is just gorgeous. If I may crank you all the way back to the 60s, I was going to ask you about the song Rose for Emily. Was that inspired at all, influenced at all by Eleanor Rigby?
I'm not sure. I mean, the title comes from a book, Rose for Emily. It's a very famous book, but I can't remember the the author of that book at the moment. Having said that, the song doesn't have anything to do with what the book's about. It's just the title. Again, it's another song that Rod wrote. He may have been somewhat influenced by Eleanor Rigby. As a band, the Zombies were incredibly influenced by the Beatles, and we thought then, and I think I can speak on behalf of us all now, we think now the Beatles were the greatest band ever. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that there would be some kind of influence in everything that we did, though I'm not aware of anything specifically on that track.
Yeah. Why was there such reluctance to release Odyssey and Oracle in the USA initially when it came out? There seems to have been some, were they just worried about it not selling or something,
Oh,
or?
I'm sure they didn't think it was a commercial proposition. It had been released in the UK,
Yeah.
and it really didn't make an impact. Um, I can remember specifically there was a review in Disc by Penny Valentine, which was very good,
Yeah.
and there were some plays by Kenny Everett on Capital, I think it was, or would it have been Radio One? I'm not sure at that time. But Kenny Everett thought it was great, but otherwise it was it was released. The release was totally unnoticed.
Yeah.
No one said they hated it. They didn't say anything. It was just was ignored really. And then a wonderful producer and player called Al Cooper, and he started Blood, Sweat and Tears. He was the
Didn't Al Cooper play on the Rolling Stones Let It
Yeah,
Bleed
that's right.
album?
That's right. He did. Yeah. And he'd just taken a job at CBS Records as a producer, staff producer. And he was in London and he picked up about 100 albums. And he said that one album stood out head and shoulders above any other album. And it was Odyssey and Oracle. He didn't
Yeah.
know it. I mean, the album was virtually unknown. The band had finished, there was no band, but he took it back to America and he went into Clive Davis on his first morning in his new job. Clive
Mhm.
Davis was the head of CBS. And he said to Clive, whatever it costs, we have to get this album. And Clive Davis said, we already own that album, but we weren't even going to release it. And it was only because of Al Cooper that he pressured them into releasing it. And they released 2 or 3 singles beforehand. And then in the end, Al Cooper said, look, you have to release Time of the Season.
Yeah.
And they did. I think it was the final throw of the dice. And over it sort of picked up plays over many years. There's a story of a DJ in Boise, Idaho, that would not stop playing it. And
Yeah.
without him, it probably wouldn't have been a hit, because from there, it likes the ripple effect. It went out to other DJs. And over 6 or 8 months, it gradually got to the top of the charts. It was #1 in Cashbox and
Yeah.
#2 or #3 in Billboard. Um, so that's the story of Time of the Season. But I think because there wasn't a band, even then, Odyssey and Oracle didn't sell in great quantities. We had a #1 record, but I think Odyssey and Oracle went into Billboard in the Billboard charts for 1 week at 98 and then disappeared, which is it's really unheard of, you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't till about 10 years later people started to talk about it. And in America, Tom Petty was a
Yeah.
huge fan and
Right.
never stopped talking about Odyssey and Oracle. And in the UK, Paul Weller just recently named it as his favorite album of all time. So there's this huge interest in this album,
Mm.
although it's never really ever been a hit anywhere. But it sold for however many. What is it, like 68? Did it come out? It
Sure.
sold for all those years,
But
50
you
something.
know, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, I don't think that was a huge success when it
Mm,
came out either.
exactly the same thing.
You know?
Although I think it's probably better known now than Odyssey and Oracle. But when it came out, it was the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I have just one more question for you because I know you have to get off to your other interview. Um, what was it you disliked about Time of the Season so much? There's a story of you not wanting to record the vocals or something. What did you
Oh,
object
right. Well, I mean, it's not liking it. It's perhaps a little bit strong, but
to?
it's the last song we recorded,
Yeah,
and it was the last song that was written as well, and it was only finished just before the session. And so
yeah,
I didn't literally, like the morning before we recorded it in the afternoon, I didn't know the song as well as I should do.
yeah,
I was very aware that we were running out of time in the studio. We were running out of money and time in the
yeah,
studio. And I was struggling a bit singing it, remembering that records were made incredibly quickly in those days. So, I mean, it meant I took more than 2 or 3 takes probably.
yeah,
Um, and Rod very kindly was coaching me from the control room through
yeah,
headphones and saying, no,
yeah,
no, can you be on the beat on that phrase? And then can you push this phrase and can you do that? And this went on and on. And I think we probably forgot that he wasn't alone in the control room. There were all people from Abbey Road, the rest of the band, and it got more and more heated, and the language got worse and worse.
yeah.
But I'll spare you the language, but it did actually come down to me saying to him, listen, if you know this song so well, you come in here and you sing it. To which he said, you're the lead singer in this band. You bloody well stand there till you get it right. And I'm really glad I did. As I said, because it went on to sell about 2 million copies. But that's probably the crux of it. And I would say it's not my favorite track on the album. I thought Care of Cell 44, you know, I'm telling this as a story against myself, you know.
Yeah,
I thought Care of Cell 44 was much more commercial. Probably the title holds that track back. I think it could have been a better title, because it's Care of Cell 44 doesn't occur in the song. It's a
yeah,
song about a guy writing to his girlfriend in prison. It's such an unusual uh,
absolutely.
lyric, and also it's a sad lyric, but over a very jaunty melody. So
Yeah,
it's very unusual, and I thought that was incredibly commercial. But
yeah.
what do I know? You
I'm
know.
trying to remember my favorite song from the album. Hang On to a Dream. I think
Oh
that is
yeah,
that.
no, that's another one that I really like too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite of that album. I listen to that album every summer without fail. It's like the start
Yeah.
of my summer. That and Pet Sounds really sort of marks the start of it all.
Well, and people do talk about the '60s with as albums. Pet Sounds, Odyssey and Oracle, and either Revolver or Sergeant Pepper. As this is not me, but I've read this time and time again. The 3 big albums from the '60s. And it's really bizarre that two of them were totally ignored when they were released, Pet Sounds and Odyssey.
Was the very first Zappa album, Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, was that did that strike you? Was that influential at all?
No, not particularly. I'm aware of, obviously I'm aware of their work, but no, not really. Much more Beach Boys and Beatles inspired, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Anyway,
incidentally, Hung Up on a Dream, I'm always trying to get Rod to play that live. We've done 4 or 5 tours over the last few years of playing the album in its entirety, and so we've played that.
yeah.
But I've never managed to persuade him to play it live when we're not doing the album in its entirety, because I think it's such a lovely song. I would love
Oh,
to
it's
do.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, Colin, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I'll let you get off for your next interview. I wish you the best of luck with the album, which is called Different Game, and it comes out. What's the exact date? I know it's later this month, isn't it?
I don't know the exact date, to be absolutely honest.
Well, I'll put a pre-ordering link below this video anyway. But it's definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening,
Thank
and
you.
I'll bid you goodbye. And Happy New Year to you, by the way.
I'm really like don't I'm glad you like the Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me as well. I'm really chuffed about that. So thanks very much for that.
My
Okay,
pleasure. My pleasure. Best of luck. Bye-bye.
talk to you. All the best. Bye.
Bye.